Hey friends, welcome to today's basic tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about two things. The first talking point is, where do I keep my media? Internal on your computer or external on external hard drives. The second talking point we'll talk about is, how do libraries, events and projects work in Final Cut Pro 10? So, you've been out shooting, gathering awesome footage for your video. You get home, you take out your SD card, you connect it to your computer, and then you ask yourself, where do I store my media? A lot of people, when they're first starting out, would just copy their media directly to the internal drive of their computer. Is this okay? Absolutely. Especially if your computer is new and has a fast SSD drive. What are the pros and cons of editing from your computer's SSD drive? Here are some pros. Easy storage location, no additional cost, so it's cheap. If it's a laptop, then it's very portable. Usually the new computers have fast SSD drives that can play back large files such as 4K. So what are some cons? Limited storage is one. You really don't want to run out of storage space halfway through a project. Another con is there is no redundancy, which basically means there's no backup if your drive fails. Now, do I recommend using your internal drive to store your media? Not really, but it's perfectly fine, especially for smaller projects. What do I recommend? I recommend external drives, literally drives that are separate from your main computer, that you plug in using USB 3, C, or Thunderbolt. Small external drives are relatively inexpensive and very portable. The newer drives are fast enough to edit from, especially if you can use something like Thunderbolt. You get a lot of space with external drives, and if you really get serious, you can invest in RAID drives that give you both redundancy and speed. But I won't be talking about RAID drives in this video. Why does it matter where you store your physical media? Well, here are some reasons. You don't want to run out of space while editing your project. If you choose a location that's too slow, you will run into playback issues while editing. Once you have your drive and all your physical media on that drive, I would highly recommend having a second drive, such as an inexpensive HDD drive, to back up your media in case of drive failure. That way, you won't lose any of your footage. So how do libraries, events, and projects work in Final Cut Pro 10? Alright, let's look at how Final Cut Pro 10 organizes media. The first thing, the top level of the ladder, if you can imagine, is what Final Cut Pro calls libraries. You can think of libraries as a single row bookshelf. The bookshelf, in this case, represents the production you're working on. The bookshelf contains events, which we can imagine as books on the bookshelf. The books you can think of as your workspace. And inside the books are all the media and projects. The project is your timeline where you build, edit, your story. It looks a little like this. You walk up to your single row bookshelf, and on the bookshelf are your books, which are your events from the shoot you did. And inside each book is all the media and projects for that particular event. Say you shot a wedding. The library is the bookshelf. It contains the whole wedding. The events may be the ceremony, the reception, the preparation, etc. So you take the book ceremony and you open it up, and inside is all the media and the project file for the ceremony. Inside the reception book is all the media and projects for the reception. This is just an example. So put it all together. At the top is the libraries. Inside the libraries are the events. Inside the events is all the media and project files for that event. Here are some examples. In the first example, let's say you shot a wedding. The library would be the name of the couple getting married. Then you might separate each event into times of day. For example, the morning preparation might be one event. The ceremony and reception would also be separate events. And each event would hold the media and project files for that particular event. Then, once you have edited them all, you can make a final event and string all the timelines together for your final cut. In this next example, Let's say you are shooting a short film. You can contain the entire short film in one library. Then you can make an event for each day of the shoot. So at the end of one day, you can place all the media and make a first assembly for that day. In this next example, say you want to make a vlog for your summer vacation. Each library is a new vacation, whether it be summer, winter, Asia, or Europe, for example. Then you might make an event for each location. Say you went to Europe. You might have gone to London. Then you can make an event for London and place all the media and project files for London in that event. Okay, let's look at one more example, and one that I use a lot. Probably most of the time for my projects, weddings, travel vlogs, etc. Let's take a wedding for an example. I use one library for that wedding. I make one event for that wedding, and I place all my media into that event as well as all my project files. Then I use Final Cut Pro's favorites, keywords, and smart collections to organize all my media. Let's open up Final Cut Pro and take a look at an example or two. Alright, so here we are inside Final Cut Pro 10. In this first example is a video shoot I did for a school here in Japan called How Mites. So I created a library called How Mites. And inside the library is the event, which I also called How Mites. If I open up the event, you can see all the keywords I used to separate all the media and audio and files, as you can see here. So for example, let's have a look. For example, we have A cam, audio, B camera, B classes, just basically everything I needed to separate so I knew what I was looking for. Okay, in this next example is a wedding I shot here in Japan for a couple named David and Yuna. So I created a library with the title David and Yuna Wedding. If we open up the library, we can see I have one event, and inside that event is all the keywords. I use to separate the footage, audio, basically everything I need to put together the story. So we have all the footage I shot in 60 frames per second, all the B-roll from inside and outside, the cake cut, the ceremony, entrance, flower toss, all those kind of things. So that's just a rough example of how I like to separate my footage. I find this way works really well for me personally, but it may not work well for you. So you should just experiment and find the best way that works for you, whether that's creating separate events or keywording and favoriting everything in one event. Just experiment, find out what works well for you, and continue from there. Well, that's it for this basic Final Cut tutorial. I hope you guys learned something new. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you have any constructive feedback, please let me know. I really want to grow as a teacher and as a presenter on YouTube. That's it from me, and I'll see you on the next video.